Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining conversation between Vower and the EMSI and the Burning Glass Institute. I love to introduce everyone to Matt Sigelman, who is the president and CEO of the Burning Glass Institute. Good afternoon, Matt.
Oh, it's so great to be together. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So before we start, let's just kind of introduce ourselves and get to know the Burning Glass Institute. So if you can, for our audience, just help us and upskill us, enroll us to what the Burning Glass Institute is, why we should care about it, and why it matters in this particular climate.
The Burning Glass Institute is an essential skill. I recently launched the Burning Glass Institute as an independent nonprofit to build on a lot of the work I've spent my career doing. Mm-hmm. Which was building a company that's now called EMSI Burning Glass, which took a data-driven approach to really being able to understand the world of work. In order to be able to help people navigate their way, to be able to understand the landscape of opportunity, to plan the kind of steps that they can take to access that opportunity, and ultimately to connect with opportunity. You've got to know where that opportunity is. The transformative innovation that EMSI Burning Glass brought to the market was this notion that instead of relying on government-based survey data, which is often, comes out long after the fact, which is macroeconomic data. So it's looking at big categories of work, like they track a job called computer programmer. I don't know what a computer programmer is. I know what a Ruby on Rails developer is, right? And so we said, look, instead, most job searches happen online today, no matter who you are. And so our innovation was, hey, look, we can actually look at this, not through a survey, but we can actually look at every job posting that's out there. And it was a transformative innovation because what it meant was that we could actually understand very specifically what are the kind of jobs that are in demand, and what are the skills that unlock them? What are the credentials that unlock them? And we could also understand people's careers and say, okay, and how do people move up? How do people rise? And so, I'm very proud of that work. And it's work that we brought to about over 1,000 colleges and universities, to whole bunch of state, local, and national governments around the world, and to thousands of companies.
Yeah.
I recently decided after just about 20 years. I love LinkedIn, by the way, for a number of reasons, but like they do this thing that my little kids do, which is ask a kid, how old are you? Well, I'm 6 and 8 months or whatever. So it tells me, it's actually 19 years and 10 months. But I felt like I wanted to really focus in on questions of mobility, opportunity, and equity in the future of work.
Amen.
We're at a transformative moment. And so I launched the Burning Glass Institute to be able to advance in a data-driven way research and practice on mobility, opportunity, and equity at the intersection of learning and work.
Nice.
And so really digging into a whole bunch of interesting trends that are going on in the market and looking at what they say about how people are able to move ahead, what's holding people back, and what we can do about it.
Nice, nice, nice. Well, we definitely are a company that utilize the skills gap, the big, amazing skills gap article. And I don't know if we can, send this out to our audience, but really where you guys break down where the skills gap per industry, where are we seeing this bottleneck of services not being met? And like you said, the platforms that are traditional platforms aren't capturing what the real-time data that you guys are pulling is really saying about the state of work and where we're going. And so we'll transition over to the skills gap because it's my favorite thing to talk about. I'll read a statement and you just tell me what you think about this. The skills gap isn't a monolithic challenge, nor does it have a monolithic solution. So when you hear that, I would really, really love to know, especially for my audience, what is the skills gap? What is the state of the skills gap right now? And who does it harm the most if we do not get it right?
So a bunch of great things to talk about there. So first of all, I think spot on in terms of what you just shared. I think it's right and it's wise. We always talk about the skills gap, definite article. There are many skills gaps. The way that I like to think about skills is they measure the distance between people and opportunity. And so when you put it in those terms, right, hey, there's talent bases and who are often going under leveraged, and there are opportunities that are going unfilled. And the ability to, the distance between them is skills. And that is, in some ways, both the biggest tragedy and the biggest opportunity of the job market. It's the biggest tragedy because we see people stuck. 44% of Americans are working in low-wage jobs.
Yep.
And at the same time, you hear so much today, especially from employers, from industry saying, we can't find workers
jobs.
And they're good
Yes.
jobs and whatever.
Yep.
And so the ability to sort of, here's the thing though, to be able to identify a gap, not at a broad, fuzzy, can't find good help these days kind of thing, but at a level of, okay, there are sets of talent I want to be able to access. You need to be able to zoom in and say, okay, what are those reservoirs of talent I can tap?
Right.
And what are the specific skills that will empower that talent to fill the jobs that are most in demand? So, when you ask, kind of who does this impact? It's hard not to say both sides of the market, both the supply
absolutely.
and demand, the people and the employers.
And I think about this from both sides because we're a marketplace that serves both sides. One being we focus on baseline to mid-level skills, which is you guys do a great job with really honing in that these baseline to mid-level skills are the on-ramp to mid-level, high-level skilled work and jobs and opportunity. Like you said, it's just the distance. But what I want to sometimes think about is why the jobs we have online that are entry level or can be fulfilled by baseline to mid-level skilled workers, why are they so overspecified? Why do you need 5 years for social media marketing? Why can't the TikTok phenomenons be able to on-ramp themselves to make good money at those jobs? Why are we still operating in an archaic way?
It's funny you use the word archaic because I often use the analogy of archaeology. We have studied billions of job openings, and I often feel that a job posting has a little bit of the air of an archaeological dig to it because there's all these layers of sediment, right? That over the years somebody sort of said, oh, we should ask for this, and things get added in. And the reality is that the net effect of it is, on the one hand, that we're holding people back from opportunity, and the other hand, it means that employers are tripping over their own shoelaces because they're trying to fill jobs, and they are filtering out a lot of the people who would be doing a great job at it. Now, the good news here is that over recent years, we're seeing some of that start to wind back. And I think this is the very positive effect of our becoming more and more a seller's market, right? That is to say, people who are selling their own labor, their own capabilities, they are in the driver's seat today. And so increasingly, we've seen a lot of the key barriers starting to fall out of the market. Actually just released a paper earlier this week, an article in Harvard Business Review this morning, together with researchers at Harvard and collaborated with. And what we found was that actually degree requirements are starting to recede. And that's big because for decades, literally, there's been this, what we call degree inflation, where you needed the kinds of jobs that your parents could have gotten without a college degree. Now you need to have a college degree to do. And, that's not progress. And so, as an example, we found, looking about 5 years ago, we found that something like 63% of production supervisors, production line supervisors, were being asked for a college degree versus only about 15% of them having one. And you see that across a bunch of fields. But we saw in our research is that that's really, in a very significant way, starting to come out. And if you extend those trends out 5 years, we project about 1.4 million jobs that will open themselves to people without a 4-year degree. And that's really important because 2/3 of Americans don't have one. And the notion that you should need to go to college in order to have a quality job with good mobility is just kind of absurd.
It's not only absurd, it's like, now what do we do that we have infrastructures from middle school, high school, and college on that says we will teach a college curriculum, a college pathway? What do you do now that the certification classes and the true, access to great wealth no longer require that? How does that start to trickle into the rest of our education system? And we don't have to answer that. That's just the things that are on my mind as we're working with younger talent to upskill them and to be prepared for work. It's they're in school being told, no, just focus on getting into this school, interviewing. And it's like, where the world is actually preparing them for something else. And in school, they're saying, no, you'll go this way or you won't be prepared for the world.
Yeah, and there's a couple problems there. One, that we do tend to oversteer. Two, that oversteering is a problem for a bunch of reasons, because it also contributes to the fact that we have unacceptably high rates of people having to stop out along the way. Nationally, about 42%, I think, of students who start college don't finish. In a community college, that figure is almost 2/3 of students who start don't actually finish a degree. And the students who, the 35 million Americans who have some college, no degree, are the ones who ironically have the highest debt. Because they aren't getting the earnings boost to pay it out. So when we sort of push people down that chute, we're doing a lot more harm than good. But here's the caveat on the other side of the equation. You mentioned that there's a lot of good pathway programs in place, and I think that's exactly right. That kind of stuff we need to do. There's good. A lot of states are starting to rethink career and technical education, what they call CTE programs. 50-state analysis of career and technical education systems, together with the Excel and Ed Foundation. And what we found was actually pretty disturbing, which is that only about 18% of the industry recognized credentials that students are earning through CTE programs are actually in demand by employers. And meanwhile, there's all sorts of certifications that employers are desperate to find that for jobs that pay well, that we're undersupplying. So it says, on the one hand, this is a moment of great opportunity, because I think both schools and the American public more generally are starting to realize that maybe instead of college for all, let's actually make sure that there are good routes for everybody. I think there was a survey I saw recently that not very many years ago, 71% of Americans said it was really important to go to college. Today it's 48%. That's a really big sea change. But we need to make sure that all students are prepared for a career. And part of the problem is that we're not lining things up well, to wit, we'll just share about CTE. And part of it is we kind of have created these separate chutes. Oh, you're on the academic path. You're on the vocational, the CTE path. And every student should be acquiring job market ready skills, and every student should be prepared to eventually return to school and earn a degree, because a degree can be a tremendous engine for economic mobility.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift, because I could stay there all day when we talk about this stuff. Let's talk about the future of work. The future of work. Everyone's the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation, you know, we can't find anyone to skill our jobs. I first would love if we can sort of dispel this narrative that all small businesses and jobs are out here with $15 an hour, ready jobs to hire people, and they just, for God's sake, looking under, you know, the corners, can't find anyone to come and work for them. Is the Great Resignation the narrative? Is it the whole story? Is it the full narrative, where all jobs, all employers can't find workers?
I think there's a lot of mistaken narratives that we're hearing today. You know, one of them, again, I think it's always easy to say can't find good help these days, but the question is, what are you doing to make your job a job that people want to come to? And part of that is about paying benefits, but a part of it is about what mobility are you offering people?
Yes.
In an economy where people thankfully have choices,
yes,
they're going to vote for the kinds of jobs that can be a launch pad to their careers. And one of the things that we've seen in our research is that you can see two different, well, first of all, there's a bunch of things that matter whether people move up. What industry you start in matters a lot. There's some industries where you have the chances of moving up out of the poverty trap without changing industry are pretty close to nil. What job you're in matters, but actually you can be in two companies in the same industry, direct competitors, and one has really good rates of employees enjoying mobility and moving up, and one not. And that's going to matter increasingly. And I think we're going to increasingly start to see visibility that employees can get into seeing that. That's one narrative that I think matters here. I think another is this question that, oh, well, nobody wants to work these days. I think it's a mistaken narrative, and for a whole bunch of reasons, not the least of which is a data problem there. If you look at the gap, you know, our workforce is pretty close to return to the same size it was pre-pandemic. We're just a couple percent off. And yet we're seeing these great screams of agony. And I think they're legitimate. I mean, we know that employers can't fill. But if you actually look at the rate of growth of consumer demand, if you look at the rate of growth of job posting, dramatically greater than you know, kind of the overall employment base and whatever. And so what that says is that we're seeing this as more a demand issue than a supply issue. It's more about too many jobs than too few people. So that's a second narrative I want to debunk. And a third one is just the framing of Great Resignation, because it's a very negative story. It's like, oh, nobody's willing to stay. And I think the other way to think about resignation or about people changing jobs is progression. What you're really seeing is a great progression. You're seeing people wanting to achieve mobility. It's a basic human instinct to want to rise. And the question is, as a company, are you helping your workers rise, and are you therefore getting some of that value of people rising, or people rising away from you?
Right. before we leave, before we leave this specific topic, when I hear the Great Resignation, and I think about a totally different narrative, and that's the narrative of the small business who's just starting, the startup, the nonprofit who hasn't even reached the level of sustainability to hire a full team. So for me, I think about, well, where do they fit in this conversation when they barely can, afford to pay themselves and operational staff before we can, talk about refining the retention or lowering the attrition rate? How can we actually just get to a point where we are saying remote work, gig work is not transitory anymore? People need the Fivers of the world if they're going to survive and scale their impact. So from your, I looked up some sort of alarming, not surprising, but alarming data on early entry workers, predominantly 16 through 19 years old. And this is on the worker side. For the unemployment for white unemployment, 16 through 19 is 9.1, but Blacks is like 20.7. So I'm hearing three, multiple, multi-layered conversations happening. One is being, how can companies in this environment who are just starting get to a point where they can have conversations about retention? And two, how can marginalized communities of early entry workers get to a point where they're hireable and then can have the option to say, hey, I need to be able to push myself up the ladder of sustainability here at this job?
I'm really glad you asked this question, and I'm really grateful in general for the work that you do every day in building those opportunities for both sides of the equation, right? Yeah. So it works. What you're doing in Vox is so powerful precisely because it is serving a deep business need, a deep commercial need from the employer, that small business that isn't going to be able to compete with Google for, from a salary perspective or whatever. But on the other hand, is able to provide that starting rung in the ladder.
Yes.
One of the things that we know is that, increasingly in a lot of careers, the bottom rung is missing from the ladder.
Yes.
And so the ability to look at small businesses and give small business a platform to connect with young adults who are trying to enter into their careers and get that first rung, prove themselves out, acquire the skills of being in a workplace is going to be critical to cracking the back of youth unemployment. It's also going to be key to helping youth move up. We've done a bunch of study of opportunity youth, and for those not familiar with the term, it's a positive spin, but it means young adults who are neither in school nor in a job. And as you just point out, there's, even in this economy, there's a lot of people who are unable to make that connection. And I think one of the things that we found is that the glass is either half full or half empty. Mm-hmm. So, we study the progressions of opportunity over time, found that about 50%, 48% to be exact, over 5 years moved up into good jobs. That's exciting because I think there's a lot of people who just write off opportunity youth and say, oh, well, they're not the guy in my school, they're going for, okay, well, I guess they're a write-off, instead of thinking of them as the valuable talent they are. But on the other hand, I used to, when I'd come home and I'd be very proud of myself and I'd tell my grandmother I got a 96 in the test, and she'd always look at me and she'd say, what happened to the other 4 points? Oh, wow. Well, I'm going to say, what happened to the other 52% who aren't rising? Yeah. And they need the kind of platform that you're providing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We think about them all the time. And I think the last time when we spoke, we talked about the middle class and what it really will take to build a strong middle class is really thinking about not a top down, but, coming from the up side in order to think about these approaches for work. So we're almost finished, and we're going to play a small game where I ask you a few questions. And please, I'm so happy that you're going to play with us. This is this game is basically a spin on our newsletters that we send out to our over 3,000 subscribers, basically breaking down labor economics in a way that they can digest. And it's called Cap or No Cap. Now, if you don't know what cap or no cap means, it's basically a colloquialism in urban communities to mean cap means it's a lie, it's not the truth, it's false, right? And no cap means it's true. That's what we're gonna go for. So I'm gonna give you 3 statements and you just say cap or no cap. So I'll define it one more time. Cap is something or someone that's false. No cap, something or someone that's true. Okay. Remote and gig work is transitory and we'll be back to the way it was.
Cap.
Yes, it's cap. And can you give us a little bit, just like a brief?
Oh, I'm allowed to actually comment? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I just thought I was,
no, why is it cap?
The one word box. Okay, cap. Here's the thing, right? So I think the reality is that this is deeply empowering to people to get agency over their own skills. It's also opening up the world of opportunity beyond geographic borders. And it's allowing people the flexibility to build around their lives. So I don't think that's going away. The key thing is that we've got to figure out how to think about gig work in a more nuanced way, because there's a big difference between delivering for DoorDash, which, you know, is a fine place to start, but not necessarily going to move you up, versus somebody who's on Upwork. And you know, kind of leveraging their design skills or something like that. And those are very different platforms. And we've got right now we use the same word to describe both.
That's true. So gig work can be doing a task for a company, you know, doing an Excel sheet for a company. And that's a digital skill. That's a skill that you can hone on and go to the bank with versus,
exactly.
100% agree. Okay. Second question, most small businesses who I would consider sole proprietors can afford to hire $15 or $20 an hour or more.
Cap.
And why is this cap, Matt?
Oh, come on. That doesn't even need an explanation. Anyone who's known somebody who's run a small business knows.
Okay, last one and the most important one. This was the most mind-boggling, thought-provoking interview you've had all year.
No cap.
No cap.
No cap. That was shameless.
Shameless plug for sure. Thank you so much, Matt.
I really enjoyed this. No, but actually, all joking aside, you know, I really enjoyed this conversation and enjoyed all the really thoughtful questions. And
absolutely.
We'll have to do this again soon.
Now, how can we follow you? How can we support the Burning Glass Institute? How can we use what you're building as a resource to help our communities where we are?
So check us out on Burning Glass Institute, all one word, .org. And also you can find me on LinkedIn, Matt Sigelman, or the Burning Glass Institute's also online. And love to hear from folks with any questions and just to connect.
Nice. And we'll make sure you have those links to connect with Matt and to ask questions and to learn and upskill yourself because it matters. Thank you so much, Matt.
This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Absolutely. Enjoy having you.
It just can't be what it can't be, cause it's simply what I said is. Bust it out the vacuum seal, you can smell this shit in Fayetteville. Blackjack while no Jacksonville, I don't even know what year it is. He didn't guard his taco, now his ground beef on the steering wheel. Coaching now my niggas ballin', you can't peep what play it is. They so full of dope, they probably don't even know what that is. I rock the middleman, he probably don't even know who it is. Just judging on my prize. I told Big 5 this ain't no fire drill. Ballin' like the Final Four, got more devils than Duke in them. Ain't no me mugging, no shoulder shrugging, see him shoot at them. Nigga took down one my guy, so I want at least two of them. So a lot of niggas still play both sides, that's why Gucci through with them.
Them 762 shoot at him, don't play with Wild Wild Pooh with him. Fall 13, we ripped that murder gang, just ask for Google them. Don't talk to me about your ass unless you came from shooting at them. I'm clutching my bump stock in the drop top, we bumping, who is him? Pop a perk, now I'm geeked up. Guess this how them nerds feel. Pat my nigga a new chopper, let's work on your third kill. Before we pull off circle the block, see how far my serve is. It's 6K for a paint a walk if you want your serve with the zeal. Show, keep that Draco on my loud screen, GTG, we try to blow. New Cartier out here with the Cuban link, had to switch out the road. 500 shots up in this bitch,